Well, you would have seen the small increase in unemployment announced today. Statistics SA saying the number of people who are classified as unemployed has risen by around 46,000 to 7.9 million. To put it another way, around 13.4 million people are not economically active. They're not working or studying. At the same time, tomorrow the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will deliver his budget. He's expected to either have to cut spending or increase taxes. Most people are estimating the shortfall of government revenue at around 15 billion rand. Riedah Ajam is the General Secretary of FEDUSA. Riedah, good afternoon to you and thank you for your time. Firstly, the unemployment figures. We really need a long period of sustained economic growth, sustained growth in jobs. What kind of policy do you believe we should follow that could create those jobs and finally help young people get jobs?
Well, Stephen, good afternoon, firstly, and good afternoon to your listeners. I think we have to start re-looking at the policies that we are engaged in, and these policies of austerity is no longer assisting us, and we are not creating the economic environment to spur on job creation in particular and make South Africa a far more attractive destination. So the stats that have been revealed just a little bit earlier today, absolutely disappointing that we are seeing the jobless figures increasing at the way they are, but not expected at this stage. So the high levels of fuel prices that we are seeing at this stage, and most certainly linked to the interest rate hikes that have been coming in fast and furious, have all been contributors. So government seriously needs to take introspect, and we have to start looking at increasing the flexibility in terms of how we approach certain matters, failing which we are going to continue on these paths of despair for workers.
When you look at all of the policies being pushed by different political parties, and Riedah, every political party has a plan to create jobs, do any of the parties have the right policies that you can see to grow employment? I mean, is there any ideas there that you think we should follow?
Stephen, they are just basically hot air being pushed out each time, unfulfilled promises, and the law of, what the possibilities lie beyond. And we simply refuse to be pulled into this process of every 4 years, nothing happens, and in the 5th year, everybody comes with manifestos, but we have seen absolutely nothing. We also cannot endorse privatization in any such way. So as we look at these, it is our responsibility as organized labor and collectively as society to start holding governments and all these political parties to account. It are all just failed promises at the end of the day.
You say you want government to move away from austerity. You want government to spend more money. The obvious question is, where do you think the money should come from?
Well, there's a lot that can be done at this stage, Stephen. We have to realize, number one, that we have to stop treating, and this is a direct message to Minister Godongwana, we have to stop seeing the budget that is tabled annually as a budget that is equivalent to a household budget. Workers are in essence only on a regressive trend, because when you take into account the prices of electricity for non-service delivery that is escalating beyond inflationary pressures, the fuel price increases that are coming through, compounded with the increases in the interest rates, household expenditure is increasing at an astronomical rate, and we simply have absolutely no form of disposable income. When you take a look at when workers are just trying to make ends meet, government is removing those ends, and we are absolutely seeing no respite. So number one, the budget must be treated in a way that speaks to the realities of what households and South Africans are enduring. And number two, we have to understand the fact that when we deal with these budgets, we are cognizant of the fact that South Africa is a developing nation. We have to loosen the ability to spend, and we have to make sure that when we deal with these issues, spending on priority areas but cutting on non-critical aspects must be the the way that the minister goes to, because ultimately we are not going to be able to realize those policies. And the one that I look towards at this stage, which is a hot potato, is the NHI. How can you realize and implement that NHI when you are going to be cutting on critical posts and you are going to be not filling those posts that are long being vacant? So we need to take introspect on where we are going to, but be cognizant of the realities of the South African working class and ultimately those citizens at large.
Riedah, I don't think anyone who is listening to you is probably going to disagree with what you said. The problem is, and I need to force you to make a trade-off here, you know, budgeting is about trade-offs. Where will the money come from?
Stephen, we have to look at, number one, the costs of doing business, and we have to understand that we are not able to win the big victories when we are dealing with Eskom, number one. That is just simply not getting their house in order. And number two, when we are looking at the next biggest item line on this agenda here now, that is Transnet, and if only we understand the important roles that they are playing and the own goals that government is scoring, fast-tracking the road to rail infrastructure process, investing in infrastructure. Government is simply not maintaining any of their infrastructure at this stage, and this is the dismal state that we are putting ourselves into. If we realize where we can make those small wins by capitalizing on the low-hanging fruits, we'll be able to advance on matters. But simply put, they are spending on non-critical areas. They are looking at not reprioritizing, and we have been calling for so long at a look at the overall and the reconfiguration of the state in order to save. And at the same time, if we are going to advance on these mechanisms, government needs to understand that servicing the debt is also a major issue. But if they are not going to overhaul the SOEs in a way that brings a lot of respite and gives assurance to the public, they are not going to win. So they've got their priorities around the other way. So if only we can look at the low-hanging fruits, we will be able to make this. But it simply seems that we talk, but we are not implementing.
Okay, so Riedah, I mean that's been a consistent criticism of government for many years. But I was going to ask if you believe that the only way out of this is to borrow more money, because that would be the only realistic way out of austerity. But from what you said about debt servicing costs, you don't believe we should borrow more money. Is that right?
It's one of those conundrums that we are faced with, Stephen. We continue to borrow, but we are not using the money effectively. There's fruitless, there's wasteful expenditure, and there's the psychology of greed, self-enrichment, and at the same time prestige that we have to move away from. We have to start investing in the manufacturing concern so that we eliminate the hardships that we experienced during lockdown. Localization must become a priority. So unless government is ready to listen, then we are not able to move forward. But it's an absolutely difficult question, because the debt servicing costs is what is putting South Africa on a back foot consistently, and it is making it impossible to reallocate more of the priority areas to social spending, which is ultimately the cornerstone of what the Constitution says, and we are simply not able to advance on those issues. So it's a definite conundrum, but we cannot continue to advance on a process of austerity at the demise of South Africans.
Riedah, we're going to run out of time, but I know that cybersecurity is a big issue for you. We've seen more and more attacks on government institutions, on private institutions. It's a big problem around the world. Do we need to spend money there too?
Oh, absolutely. If we are going to compromise the integrity of our data and all other elements associated with that, then how then do we advance the issue of credibility? So we must certainly have to put priority on those particular areas. It has been in the media for quite some time last year, so most certainly we have to ensure that the security of the data without any further breaches coming to the fore.
Riedah Ajam, thank you, General Secretary of the Federation of Unions of South Africa. Do appreciate the time. Well.